Astroglide is an awful name, okay? It's not indicative of what the product does or what the product is or how you're supposed to use the product. So I want to talk about what are the actual best video game names of all time. Ones that are actually good, that are indicative of how you're supposed to play them and use them. Astroglide burned me. You burned me. I hate you. I'm gonna have to get you back.
Oh, that's the
I
best
can't
thing.
believe that.
Oh,
I'm gonna go first, Alex.
yeah, yeah. Please,
My,
please.
I like to keep it simple. That's why I like to go number my. We're just doing five, right? So,
Yeah, yeah.
Atari Golf. That I love this title, and we're not rating the games. This is the name of the game. I love that one. It's short. Two, it's direct. Three, it's sweet. There's no sponsors. There's no year. There's no confusion. There's no horsing around. It's Atari Golf. You know what you're going to get. There's nothing fancy to it. It is plain and simple, freaking crystal clear golf. I love that because nowadays that is so rare. When is the last time you read a game title and it was that clear what it was?
Uh, yeah, it's like the NES era or so. Untitled Goose Game, which is odd because it's called
But
Untitled
I don't know
Goose
what
Game.
that means. Yeah, what is that?
You're literally running around as a goose
But
doing
I don't know
random
what a
things.
goose game is, so that's still not as good. I'm thinking like maybe virtual reality games since they're starting in the beginning foundation, laying the foundation for the future. Some of those I'm sure are pretty like C Smash, not maybe quite as direct, but you figure you're gonna play racquetball. That's aside the point. I love golf. That's my number five game title. That is because it's so clear. It's direct. That's my first one.
This
There
is
it is.
what this is what I want to say, Adam. I thought it was interesting. This is the cover of it. Um, you mentioned there's no sponsors or anything like that. This is Atari, early eras of video game. They finally can make a golf game. I thought it was interesting. Right here, you can see they trademarked the name golf, as if by putting that T in there, nobody else is allowed to use the word golf anywhere else in the world. I thought that was pretty clever of Atari. I think that's maybe why we haven't seen golf on the PlayStation or Xbox here in recent years. Um, I I do appreciate the early days of video games when they could literally name things whatever they wanted. I mean, thinking about games like Yar's Revenge, like that means nothing to you, right? But then they had the
Nope.
games that were really simple, like Adventure. It's an adventure game, and they had even on the NES there was just like track and field. There's a
Yep.
game called I think on NES there's a game called Baseball. I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
No
Uh,
doubt.
so I totally understand. I went in a different direction here, Adam. We'll go with my first game on the list here. I wasn't thinking of games that told me everything that was happening in the game. I was thinking of games that I've played where the name has stuck with me. And sometimes the name sticks with you just because the game's good, right? Like Near Replicant, Near Automata, those are good games. I think of those. That's good feelings when I hear the name, but that tells me nothing about what's going on in the game. That it's not a great name. It's unique, but it's not great. Here's a game I love. It's not a great game again, but it's a good name. It's called R.A.D. Rad. And so when I saw that on the box art when I was in the stores, it was always engaging. This game just calls itself Rad, and it's got a subtitle. Rad stands for Robot Alchemical Drive. And when you look at the box art, you see a giant freaking robot like a Megatron or a Megazord or something like that, like one of these giant Gundams or something. And you know exactly what's going on. It's giant robots. You're driving them, and it's rad. I freaking love that game. Just for its name alone, almost. I thought that was such a good name, and it sticks with me so well. Have you even seen this game, Adam?
Never heard of it.
Yeah, of course you haven't.
No, no, I have not. But moving on, I've got to throw Mortal Kombat a bone because as a kid, if you remember, I mean, the title had you hook, line, and sinker all on its own. It's such a manly, a definitive. It has like a staunch masculinity to it, man. Like Mortal Kombat. And then, even more so, they replaced the C with the K in combat. So, it had to be cool. It had just a great sounding name. The game itself was also very good. Again, we're focusing on the name, but when you read a name like Mortal Kombat, immediately you are invested and you want to know what is that game about. You just get visions of gore and blood and crazy awesome finishing moves. Like the game itself is very indicative of the name. So those two work really well together. Mortal Kombat, I mean, still is one of, I think, the best names in video games now. Yeah, it's still going on, still going strong. I think the name is part of that.
I I think that's a thing, right? Is that's a sign of a good name is when it goes through decades and it doesn't change the name. The thing I like about Mortal Kombat is that when it came out, I was a young child and I didn't know the word mortal and I didn't know the word combat, but I knew the words Mortal Kombat, and that meant something to me. And so when I finally learned the word combat, I was like, why is there not a K there? This doesn't make any sense. And then I learned the word mortal. I was like, oh, so like something that can die. And suddenly the game took on a whole new meaning. I guess not a whole new meaning, but the game title made sense. But although you don't know what Mortal Kombat means as a kid, the word Mortal Kombat has that consonance to it. You feel what's going on just in the name. And since the game's been around for a long time, it has lost kind of meaning, right? Like we all know what Mortal Kombat means, but at the time, that's a pretty good name for a fighting game, right? Think about what came before it. Pit Fighter and Street Fighter, games that just had to put what they were doing in the title. This is one they came up with a creative name. I don't know the story behind the K instead of the C. I imagine there's a copyright issue because Mortal Kombat is kind of like an idiomatic phrase. But yeah, that's a good pull, Adam. I didn't think of that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, what's your next one?
My next one here, you laughed when I mentioned this. Beautiful Joe. Beautiful Joe. And you've never heard of Beautiful Joe, Adam?
And no, he is saying beautiful.
Beautiful, like a view. People who are listening, they know Beautiful Joe. So Beautiful Joe is a game. It came out as part of the Capcom 5 for the GameCube. This is a side-scrolling action beat 'em up that harkens back to like the days of, I can't even think of the name of it. Beats of Rage, Streets of Rage, games like that, where you're just beating up opponents and moving on to the next arena. But they added a twist to it. First of all, it had this awesome comic book cell shading style, so it felt like you were playing a comic book. Pretty new for the time. But it was Beautiful Joe because you as the player were technically directing a movie of this action hero going through these scenes and fighting guys, and you could adjust the view. So if you zoom in, it slows down time. And if you zoom out, it speeds up time. And there's all sorts of other things. You can take a snapshot. And so you're adjusting the view, but then it also sounds like Beautiful Joe, which sounds exactly like an old cheesy superhero type name. Perfect name. My dad still makes fun of me for playing this game based on the name alone. Great game, even better name.
Okay, the game sounds actually pretty interesting. Makes much more sense now that I know what the game is. Still, reading that wouldn't make me want to play the game. It doesn't make it obviously apparent what it is. It's interesting. It hooks you because you're like, what the heck does that mean? I see where you're going. I like that. So
I like games where the name explains the game. The name has a value to the game. I like the name I like a game with a name like that. So Beautiful Joe. Yeah. Good name.
So going back to Mortal Kombat very quickly, not going into the whole backstory here, the Mortal Kombat team had a hard time coming up with a name that everyone enjoyed. So someone wrote down combat, and then someone else, almost as like a graffiti, wrote a K over the C just to be kind of quote unquote weird. And then someone was like, why don't we name it Mortal Kombat? Keep the K. That's how it came about. Interesting.
It's interesting.
It worked.
This does make me think, how do they come up with video game names? Because nowadays, I was looking through, when we decided to do this, I was looking through the PlayStation Store and just reading the names of games that have come out. And they're almost all unequivocally terrible. Like, the games can be good. That it's very, very hard to find a video game name that you think, that's a good name. That is a well thought out name. You either have two ends of the spectrum. You have a game that's very much describing what's going on, or you have a name that means absolutely nothing, even if you play the game. I'm thinking of like those visual novels like Fata Morgana or something like that.
The fate
or you
of
get the games are they're like zero time extinction, deliverance. What does that mean? I don't even know. I hate when games do that. Hyper Dimension Neptunia. What does that mean? I hate those kind of games. But then you have the other ones like I'm looking here at my list, Pierhead Arcade. All right, like I'm not interested in it because I know exactly what's on the 10. I'm at the Pierhead playing arcade games. A little bit of creativity goes a long way with these kind of things.
Speaking of creativity, Kingdom Hearts. You don't know what the heck Kingdom Hearts is, but the sound of it, when you read Kingdom Hearts, you don't immediately know what's going on, of course. But within the lore of the game, Kingdom Hearts is so shrouded in mystery and what it even is in the first game. You find out at the very, very end. But then it carries on multiple meanings within the series. You have the heart, both as the will, as they do, of course, like the friendship, the love, all that bull crap. The heart itself is very meaningful and plays a huge significance within the game itself. So the title of the game and the lore behind it and what it actually means within the game, whether you realize it or not as you're playing it, is very powerful. That's why I like it. As the top tier games to me, as you're going to see for the names, of course, there's hidden meanings within the names that play significance to the games itself and kind of does a double entendre type thing. Kingdom Hearts is a great example. It's only number 3 for me, but it's very good. I know you don't like the game, but
yeah, but because I'm not allowed to talk about the game, I will talk about the game's name and why I don't like it and why maybe I do like it a little bit. The game's name is very indicative of the game in that it's a mishmash hodgepodge of nonsense. It's almost like they took 2 die of random Japanese anime words and they just rolled them and was like, okay, we got Kingdom over here. What's this one over here? Hearts. Kingdom Hearts is the name of the game. You could call this absolutely, you could call this Wonderland Adventure, and it would carry the exact same meaning. It would be the exact same thing. You could call this game Shoestrings. It would be the exact same thing because they could just make up nonsense.
You're absolutely wrong, but we need to move on. Hold
on. The reason I like the name is because it rhymes with Kingdom Farts, which is moving on. Okay, my next game on the list, I think I actually have it here. I'll show you. Oh, yes. So I do love this series. It's not underrated. People kind of know it. This is Time Splitters Future Perfect. Time Splitters Future Perfect. Now, this is the third in the series. It's a game where you're traveling through time, you're splitting time, but I really love the subtitle. They could have called it Time Splitters 3. Nobody would have cared. Nobody would have batted an eye. The second was called Time Splitters 2. They called it Time Splitters Future Perfect, which is a chef's kiss play on words with the whole grammatical nature of the word future. Do you know what future perfect tense is, Adam?
Dude, I'm not in 6th grade anymore.
It's something like he will have done, something along those lines. It's a very esoteric grammatical term that also applies to the game. And you are doing things in the future, and then you play past levels and encounter yourself doing the stuff in the future. It's so wonderful, so wonderfully ties in. It's a great name that ties into the mechanics of the game, and it gives you full carte blanche, reason to jump past the whole Time Splitters 3 issue. Just awesome name. Awesome game, too. Just phenomenal.
You're right. I like that title. And in the same vein, I'm going with Journey. It's a simple name, Journey. You don't know too much about it, but it's direct. And there's kind of this almost this hidden meaning. So it's so unassuming until it isn't. So you start, I think you've played this, Alex.
Mm-hmm.
You just play, you're traveling alone in the desert and you encounter obstacles. It's difficult, and they do a very good job on making the character feel as though they're having to persevere and kind of outwill Mother Nature and the obstacles that are set before them. And you're alone, and it's kind of scary, but then you're all alone until you're not. That's the beauty of it. You could choose not to be alone. It's wonderful. So the journey is obviously this double entendre of the journey to get to the finish line. But then when you're finished with the game, you feel like you yourself has gone through a journey. And then when you get to the point where you can meet other people, although not speak to them, you see them playing, you're playing together without speaking. You feel you have gone with a journey on someone else and that you're connected. That I think is extremely powerful, not only as a game, but the meaning of that name, Journey, it's good. It's good. I liked it. The first time I played that game, man, it kicked me in the nads. I was rolling on the ground like a baby for 45 minutes. I loved it.
What was the name of the person you played with? Do you know? Do you remember their
Oh, I
gamer
don't
tag?
remember. It was I think it was something I couldn't even pronounce. I think maybe it was a Chinese guy or something. I don't know.
Oh, well, it's a great game. And I do like the simplicity. I like the simplicity of the name. I like the simplicity of the game, right? It's not a complicated game. This is that studio, that game company. They also made Flower, which is a pretty good name for that game because it's literally you are a flower pollinating other flowers. And I think this kind of fits in that motif. And you're right. As you go through the game, the word journey means more than just, getting from point A to point B. And it kind of ties into that whole idea of like, the real treasure of the journey is the friends we made along the way, which is exactly what that game's about. So good shout, Adam. That's a good name for a game. Kind of like an artistic variant of the whole golf motif that you brought up initially.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Next game on the list, I'm doing a last minute switcheroo. My number one is now my number two. The game released here initially as Jet Grind Radio, released in Japan as Jet Set Radio. And I've played the game. It's all right. A lot of people really like it. But I just remember seeing that name in a magazine when the Dreamcast came out and I didn't have a Dreamcast and thinking, I want whatever that game is. I need that game. It's a rollerblading game. It's like a rollerblading platformer that's cel shaded and really stylish, very Japanese, but it's very cool looking in pictures. But the name alone just sold me on everything about it. I said, yeah, I gotta get it. I gotta figure out what Jet Grind Radio is. It's radio that's cool music. You're grinding on rollerblades. That sounds awesome. And there's jet, so you're going fast. It nailed everything. And it has the Jet Set Radio has that rhyming to it that's just almost poetic. It's got a poetic quality to the name. So I love it. I love it.
I don't see where you're going there, but you know what? It's your list. It's your past. Good for you, man. Dreamcast, is dope. I thought you would have gone for Seaman or Seaman rather, but whatever. Anyhow, my number one game has to be Zelda: A Link to the Past. Very few games arguably no other game nails a title like A Link to the Past. It is beautiful. The double meaning of this game linking you to the past. It obviously has like a chain. You link the past in the future, in the present. The link there, very obvious, plays a big role within the game. But then Link being the protagonist is dope. I remember playing it probably as a kid. I didn't realize how good of a title this was until I was maybe in middle school. And then I was like, whoa, that's a double meaning. That was like the first moment it hit. That's when I realized what a double entendre or double meaning was because of this game. It's a brilliant game. It's a brilliant title. It's got to be number one. And I don't know what yours is going to be, Alex, your number one, but you're wrong.
I'm going to argue with you, Adam. I'm not to derail your number one, your favorite. A Link to the Past. That's clever wordplay. I give kudos to them for that, especially because it came from a Japanese studio pulling off these pretty clever puns. The first half of the name of the entire series, I have always hated. The Legend of Zelda, which implies that Zelda is a protagonist and there's a story to Zelda herself in the game that is worth telling. Do you want to know what the story of Zelda is? Do you want to know what the Legend of Zelda is? A bad guy captured Zelda and held her in a castle, and she sat there while a dude named Link ran around and had an adventure and established a legend with everybody in the world before he busted her out of jail. That is the Legend of Zelda. It's really the Legend of Link. And the other reason that this is not Legend of Zelda is not a great name is that when people play the game, if they're not familiar with the lore, they assume and think the main character's name is Zelda. I don't get why they named it that. I think they just I don't get it. Maybe I'm missing something important here. Zelda's not the true hero here. She does nothing special. Maybe in the later games when they're trying to shape the games into the name, Link to the Past is good. You should have just said A Link to the Past.
But Zelda doesn't tell you that's the protagonist. I like it. We don't got time. Alex, your number one game.
Okay, I'm gonna throw out some ones here. These are honorable mentions before I drop my number one. Katamari Damacy, a game so audacious, a name so audacious they didn't even localize it when they brought it to America, and everybody knows exactly what it is now. Resident Evil, a game it was originally Biohazard in Japan, and they thought of the cheesiest B-movie horror flick name, Resident Evil. It was so bad, people hated it when it came out. They hated it. They thought it was so dumb, but it stuck, and we love it. That's a great name. Also, Devil May Cry, play on the words Devil May Care, but now you're going to make the devil cry. I love that. Oh, chef's kiss there. Every Extend Extra. This is a Mizuguchi joint. It's a game where you are making yourself die, and every time you die, you go out a little bit further, and you're trying to extend how long until you make yourself die again. Really fun game. Really cool name there. But my number one, and this has a bit of lore to it, is Too Human. Too Human. Now, not a great name in and of itself, but the reason I picked it, this is not a great game in and of itself, it's a game I really like, is before they ran out of funding, they came up with the name Too Human because they thought this is a game about you are a Norse god, which is actually a person who happens to be hyper rich, so rich that they can modify themselves as cybernetics to the point that they are a god amongst their mortal peers. And it's Too Human because as you progress, you can choose to augment your humanity, augment yourself as a human, get stronger and stuff, or augment yourself with cybernetics. And you kind of, the idea was that you would come to this point where you have to make the call. Is it worth being too human so that you can still be a human, or do you make yourself too cybernetic and risk losing your humanity? Now, they lost funding. They couldn't pan out the story. The game didn't do well commercially, so they couldn't pan that out. But I love the fact that they thought of that name to match in with the struggle that you should be having in the story with the game as you progress your character and level your character up. Good name, good backstory behind it. Pretty good game if you give it a chance. Too Human, everybody. Also, I'll say it's illegal to buy this game now. There were some licensing issues, so you can't buy it. I think it's free on Xbox Store. But yeah, they had to destroy all copies that weren't sold, and they can't sell it anyway.
Well, that is what we think are the top 10 video game names of all time.